Hey, everybody, I'm Jim Deedlow. This is my podcast. Don't forget, you can get it at Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can just listen to some of my latest stuff. I say this because sometimes this airs on the radio on AM 1230 WJOB and 104.7 FM. This actually was recorded live during my morning show. And, you can do a podcast, can record a show, but there's nothing like live radio. And every once in a while, the magic happens when people call in and start telling their stories. It kind of happened just out of the blue spontaneously on November 11th of 2025. I just came in and sat down, and people started calling in, and it was Veterans Day, and people started telling some of their stories. So here, I'll just cut up some of that, and we'll play that as this podcast, and I hope you like it. Their kid, their brother, their sister, their brother, their sister even gave their lives for this, what we do right now, talk on the radio. And I think sometimes the gravity of that is lost. How about you?
Well, Blue was a Marine officer, and he grew up in Munster. And I know people, teachers who had him in their class. They told me he was really an outstanding kid, great student, great athlete. And they said to me, when I learned that he had been killed, that taught me the cost of war, that a kid like that was killed in a war. And I said, yeah, war is pretty, it's not for nothing that a former, a Civil War Union general said war is hell. And the good thing it is, because we might like it too much. And yeah, it's not pretty, that's for sure. And it's not that pretty for people who survive it. I mean, you on days like this, you think back on the people you served with in wartime, and you almost like pinch yourself. I mean, their lives changed, and years went on, and here you are, 30, 40, 50 years later, and you're still alive and above grade, but they gave it all. And I think you'll find that people who are veterans are, when it comes to going to war, they're the ones who say, "Hold on, don't be don't be too swift here, because it's easy to get into war, it's not so easy to get out." I remember 9/11. I was a business professor at the time, and the classes, I mean, they were really interesting. The women were crying, and people were really scared, and the guys were angry, and boy, they wanted to. They were talking about, we hit them hard, bomb the bejeebers out of them and so forth. And I said, how many of you been to war? My hand was the only one that went up, and I said to the class, war ain't pretty, and before you start throwing bombs around, you better know who hit you first, because you just start throwing bombs around and you will end up with more enemies than what you started, and that is not a very good situation to be in. One enemy at a time.
Well, I think I'll say for anybody in the region listening, that was outstanding, Walt. You summed up the meaning of Veterans Day, and now I don't have to. You know, Walt, if you just took your phone, and I'm pretty sure one of your kids might have to walk you through it, or grandkids.
Oh, yes.
If you just talked into it and just told all the stories that and give your conservative viewpoint on some things, if you must, but like your time in the service, your time going through the 60s, where we are today. If you put it in and you just sent me the tape, I would play it. I would cut it up and play it. Just a thought. All right, man. I respect you, and I respect everything, and thank you for all you've done for me over the years here, even though I often very much disagree with you and want to hang up on you. Is that okay?
Well, I was doing myself a favor in that before you and your wife took ownership of WJOB, it was in bankruptcy court, and you had people like Therm Faree holding down the fort, and I suddenly realized that the station was up for grabs, and it might end up as a religious station or classic music or just a music kind of thing. And I thought it was really important to keep WJOB News Talk on the air. And so before that, I was just mostly a listener for the news and weather driving into Chicago. On occasion, I would call in mainly over international issues. And I thought, you better get in there and uh, just start telling the truth about the kind of corruption that goes on around here. And it'll really irritate the Democrats, and they'll be calling in too. And keep it going so that we have somebody take over like you and your wife did to keep keep it a talk news. I think it was important for given the character of politics and government in good old Lake County, Indiana.
All right. Well, remember my suggestion. Probably you're going to pick up an old cassette tape recorder with an old condenser microphone, and then I'll have to digitize all of it. But you give me the stories, I'll play them. I'll see you. Bye. I couldn't give him a compliment without making fun of him a little bit. You know what I mean?
Something that I have to bring out, and I brought it out before, pounding on the door at 70 is my father. I kind of thought he was in World War II, and he would mention things to me. He'd turn around and he'd tell me that river was cold. Then I finally put it together. He had crossed the Rhine River. And then when the teachers and the nuns at school, what did your dad do in the Army in World War II? I went back, Dad, what'd you do? What'd you do? He said, I did nothing. And then one time, I was sitting there, and my dad turned at me, and he said, I'll never forget the smell of the concentration camps. My dad passed in 1983. And in 1991, Schindler's List come out, and everybody put something over their nose when they went into the concentration camps, okay? So my mom had told me that my dad was wounded in the Rhineland, and he spent 2 weeks in Patton's Hospital, and he was back out on the front lines. So when I had four brothers, and you showered one right after the next. And I was the last boy, and I told my dad, I said, what happened to you? And he told me, never mind. And when he'd get tired, he'd start dragging his right leg, right? So I asked him one time, you want to go duck hunting? He said, I never want to shoot a gun again. And then we had trouble with somebody on the block. And I said, I got some relief in the closet there. And he says, don't worry about it. I'll do it with my bare hands. I said, oh, you're a tough guy, huh? So when my mom was passing away, I had to find all these records. I had to find these rest estimates. And I looked, and there it was. The papers are all yellow. I'll show them to you. I just ain't going to message them to you. My father had 2 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart. And I said, he never said a word. Never said a word. So my brother, the carpenter, 599, my uncle was Uncle Alex was in the Patton's Tank Battalion. My one uncle was a prisoner of war, Uncle Joe, and Uncle Al was a paratrooper. My dad, they'd all meet. We couldn't go in there. They shut the door, right? So my brother tells me he was listening one time, and they told my dad to march him over the hill, and you know what that meant, right? So here I sit, and I put this all together. But my whole life, I never knew what my dad did for 55 years. How about that? 2 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart. Maybe he picked up the wrong child, like my dad said. And what's he doing out there playing in the cold? He's turning purple. But you know what? That's the way it is. And my dad was good friends with Uncle Charlie. They would sit at the racetrack, and they would watch the twins. You know, we'd all be a big one happy family. How about
All right,
that?
so let's take this apart. Anybody that wants to call in and tell about anybody, or if you want to call in yourself, any sort of military service, if you want to congratulate someone, you want to say shout out to somebody. But I think that from we've had veterans views here all these years, and here's the difference. The real older ones like Pat O'Donnell and mainly I'll just talk about Pat. I won't bring other people into it. We had this discussion. I'm like, well, Pat, you need to. I want you to talk about what happened in Vietnam and how you feel about it, and that you could help others with that. And he's like, Jed, we just don't do that. We just don't talk about it. And how many guys like your dad had major action, saw the most horrible atrocities, and just could never talk about it again? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd like to mention something else, too.
Sure, go ahead.
So I noticed 2 doors down, the man there, I don't want to mention his name, he's deceased. He was in Patton's Third Army. And him and my father had something in common that I put together. Now, my father gave money to build St. Catherine's Church and gave me money in the envelope every week to put in the box, right? And I noticed something with him and my father. They would never go inside of a church unless there was a marriage. So I'm saying to myself, let me see, you give me all this money, you supported a church, but you don't go to church. Now, the guy 2 doors away, he would pick up the women on the block, the old women on the block, and take them to church. I'd watch this, and then come back and then pick them up. Now, if it was a church wedding, of course, my father had to go in when my brothers got married. But I noticed that, and I can't put my finger on it. And one time there was a German Shepherd, and he was biting everybody in the alley I take care of. So I got relief. I was working on my dirt bike, and my relief's under my workbench, right? So I ran to get my relief. I look outside, and the World War II veteran that fought under a Patton took a baseball bat to that German Shepherd. That's bravery there, you know what I'm saying? So, you just seem to put things together, and that's all I got to say. But you've been pretty cranky about me not riding that dirt bike through that studio.
Before we take a phone call, I got to shout out the veterans in my family real quick.
Sure.
The ones actually, my grandfather just had a birthday. He would have been 79 this year. My grandfather, Richard Lemos, and then my uncles, Uncle Freddie, Uncle Junior, and my Uncle Peter all served when they were younger. And yeah, we just had Dia de los Muertos and then now Veterans Day. So it's very nice to kind of remember all those things, and also just to thank them for everything that they did, and then all the other military personnel that are in my family. So shout out to y'all.
So you're a Lemos?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
So your Uncle Freddie married Becky?
Yep. And then Julia,
And he was active in 369,
yep,
right?
they all were active in 369. Mm-hmm. So
Yes,
my family went to the pancake breakfast that they had, because my grandfather and Uncle Junior, Uncle Fred, they all loved going to the pancake breakfast. And it was so funny because I'm pretty sure they saw Sam there because my dad's like, yeah, we saw somebody there that you produced their show. And I was like, oh, who? And it's like some high school show. And I was like, high school show? I'm like, I don't produce a high school show. And I was like, is he wearing a Highland jacket? They're like, yeah. I'm like, you saw Sam. They also saw Frank Mervan was there. He was there introducing himself to people. And then they're like, yeah, you had the interview with our daughter. And they were like, oh, those are your parents. I was just like, yeah, those people right there, those are my parents and my grandmother. They were all there. So it was kind of like all small world, full circle.
So that was when? When was the?
This pancake breakfast was on Sunday. It was at St. Pat's, I believe, in EC. And I was unable to go because I was doing work for the other studio where we were live from 8 to 10, and the pancake breakfast was at 9:30, I believe. So I was unable to make it.
So Freddie is at the level of your grandfather. He was your grandfather's brother.
Yes.
So Fred Lemos married Becky.
Mm-hmm. They had a daughter, one of their daughters, Julia, and then Julia married Dave.
Yes.
So then that's how the connection's there.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So I used to go to some of those things with Fred, like the 369 stuff, pancake breakfast, some other celebrations. But he was very adamant about remembering the people from EC that were killed in action. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know there were so many from EC and all the different wars that have been killed.
They used to come to St. Stan's and talk to the students about their time in Vietnam. And we had one guy, we called him Pops. He was a World War II veteran. He'd come and he talked to the kids as well. But they had to, of course, censor what happened a little bit because you're talking to smaller children. But one thing I remember, like there's two main things. I remember that my grandfather, he said that he was on one of the helicopters and they told him, kick this off the aircraft. What's in it? Don't worry about it. Kick it off the aircraft. We need to get it off. I don't know if it was ammo, if it was supplies. They're just like, you need to get it off the aircraft, and everybody do that. And also, they all said that if you were fed something, don't ask what it is. It could be a snake. It could be a bug, whatever. If it tasted good, there you go. That's what you're eating. Don't ask them what it is, because if you find out what it is, you're not going to want to eat it. Those are one of the two highlighted things. So, but I wish I could ask them now that I'm older and I'm able to understand a little bit more of the story.
You're older, are you? Okay, go ahead.
Well, opposed to 10 years old, I'm able to understand the stories now, and I wish I would be able to kind of sit down and ask them, okay, what happened? Because my mom, my tia, they don't know all the stories. My grandmother doesn't know all the stories because they kind of, as you said, they kind of kept those to themselves. But like you said, they wanted people to remember these are the people who fought. These are the ones who lost their lives for this country. And those are the ones we have to remember.
That last person was Adrianna Alvarez, one of the producers here and the head of the WJOB 1230 podcast network. Go to Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and just like the WJOB podcast network, and there's a whole bunch of them. So I hope you like it. That was from November 11th of 2025. Just some people just kind of talking about Veterans Day and what it means to them. So I hope you liked it.